Chapter 1. The King's Banquet, Feast of Zeus. Verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, which was just a title. This was Ahasuerus, who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. As I showed you the the map just now. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan. Shushan, for those who have not seen the map, okay. Shushan is here. In short, is Susa. Very Susa. Very problematic. Okay. Shushan. The citadel. Citadel is a palace. It is a fortified palace. That is in the 3rd year of his reign. He made a feast for all his officials and servants. And scholars said it numbered between 1,000 to 2,000 people. The powers of Persia and Media. So that's why if you read history books and so on, you find Medes, MEDES hyphen Persian. So it is, these are the two nations. The people, the powers of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces being before him. When he showed, in my Bible, I added one more word for me. Don't anyone add, but for me, show off, okay? When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days in all. Imagine you are invited to the Istana and you camp there for 180 days. Wow. Okay. But as I mentioned earlier, this 6 months festivities was in preparation of his impending military campaign against Greece. And so he wanted to win their support, these people, to win their support so that he can become their supreme leader. And when these days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in Shushan, the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white and blue linen curtains fastened with cords of fine linen and purple on silver rods and marble pillars, and the couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise and white and black marble. And this was quite a few thousand years ago. Today, we go to Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, many places also don't have all this opulence. He was really wealthy. And they served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other. So this one not factory production. One shop produced 100 cups. This one is individually. With royal wine in abundance, according to the generosity of the king. In accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory. Now, as we study this book, and also about Medes, Persian Empire, you will find that they seem a bit different from the Babylonian Empire. In the Babylonian Empire, or even the Assyrian, when they captured any nation, the one thing they would do is to displace the people. They bring them from wherever they are, their home country, and bring them to Babylon or Assyria, or just throw them around, just to displace them so that their national identity is broken. So there's no patriotism within them. They cannot resist. So really break them up. But for the Medes Persian, they allow the people to continue to stay where they are, to remain and practice their culture. No problem. You can do as you were, but your loyalty must be to the Persian king. That's all. Okay? But the rest you can carry on. And even this, if I understand the culture then, if the king says drink, you better drink. How can you decline them? But here the law says drinking not compulsory. Yeah. Singapore also drinking not compulsory. Smoking also not compulsory. Okay? But paying the tax is compulsory. For so the king had ordered all the officers of his household that they should do according to each man's leisure. Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace which belonged to King Ahasuerus. So the queen had her own area in the palace, and as the culture was of those days, men they feast on their own and they party, and the women party on their own. Social custom. On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, this is so diplomatic. It means, you know what? Mabok. It means drunk. He commanded Mahuman, Vista, Habona, Victor, Abathar, Zita, and Carcass, 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown, in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. This was his crowning jewel. He had showed off everything, from the couch to the vessel to the cups to everything. He showed off to the people, his guests. Now the only one thing he hasn't showed off was his wife. Hey, this is the crowning jewel. So he told the eunuchs, or actually you go and read the original meaning, is called them bed keepers. Keep the bed of the queen. And for that, they have to be eunuchs. Okay? You don't understand, ask the person next to you. Proverbs 31 verse 4 and 5. Proverbs 31 verse 4 and 5. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink, lest they drink and forget the law. Proverbs 31, verse 4 and 5. Lest they drink and forget the law, and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. So alcohol has a way of distorting your thinking, your perception, and so on. And Paul in his epistle said that what? Don't get drunk. Okay? So apparently this King Ahasuerus was drunk. So he called for the queen. Verse 12. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men who understood the times, for this was the king's manner toward all who knew law and justice, those closest to him being Tashina, Shita, Admatha, Tashish, Marish, Masina, and Memucan, and 7 princes of Persia and Media. So these people were the inner circle, who had access to the king's presence and who ranked highest in the kingdom. What shall we do to Queen Vashti according to law? Because she did not obey the command of King Ahasuerus brought to her by the eunuchs. And this was a very embarrassing moment. Just before he went to war, He wanted to show his guests that he is powerful. But he cannot even control his mind. How to go to war? And Memucan answered before the king and the princess, Queen Vashti has not only wronged the king, but also all the princes and all the people who are in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will become known to all women, so that they will despise their husbands in their eyes when they report. King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought in before him, but she did not come. This very day, the noble ladies of Persia and Media will say to all the king's officials that they have heard of the behavior of the queen. Thus, there will be excessive contempt and wrath. In other words, there will be breakdown of domestic order. But I have a funny feeling these wise men, actually they got problems at home. So they're just using the king to take advantage of the situation. Verse 19. If it pleases the king, let a royal decree, a law, go out from him, and let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it will not be altered. That Vashti shall come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. The other thing about Medes Persian Empire, the king doesn't have full authority and prerogative to do anything he likes. He still has to abide by the law. And once the law is written and announced, it cannot be altered. Okay, that is the judicial system of the Medes Persian Empire. Even the king cannot alter the law. So you must bear this in mind as we read the other chapters. So, we tell the king, please let this law be written so that she shall come no more to the king, and let someone else take her place. Verse 20. When the king's decree which he will make is proclaimed throughout all his empire, for it is great, all wives will honor their husbands, both great and small. Amen. And all the men say amen. So, on this occasion, the queenship of Vashti was terminated. And the reply, verse 21, pleased the king and the princess, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. Then he sent letters to all the king's provinces, to each province in its own script, and to every people in their own language, that each man should be master in his own house, and speak in the language of his own people. The whole idea is so that everyone understands this new decree. Now, because there were 127 provinces, and they were all speaking in their own language or dialect, that's why it took a bit of effort for the letters to be sent in their own language. But the important thing is all will know. Now is no longer Queen Vashti. Okay? Simple. And that ends chapter 1.